Okay, well, hello, I'm Chris, and this is my how to wire up a GM points distributor. Okay, I'm going to explain it to you. We're going to draw a wiring diagram, and then I'm going to go put it on the car and start it. The car is a 70 Chevelle. I'm not sure what years have this. 77 and back, something like that. On a points ignition, you're going to need an Allen and a feeler gauge. We're not going to go through everything. I'm just going to show you how to basically get this thing ready. Now on points ignition, you also want to use 7mm wires. Only thing about coils is never put a coil down like this, mount it like that. Always mount your coil like that. This is the coil I'm going to be using in this video. I think these are about $55. When you buy yours, make sure you buy the one with the resistor. It's a few dollars more, I think, but make sure you buy the one with the resistor just to have the freaking resistor anyway. If you mess with cars, you always just want stuff like that. Well, it seems like in all my electrical videos I have these haters that for some reason they think I'm making this stuff up, or they just think I don't know what I'm talking about, or they want me to magically fix their car over the internet. All my information comes from wiring diagrams. This is an assembly manual. Everything that I do is I'm taking this information and trying to help you understand it. That's all I'm doing, okay? I'm not making stuff up. Okay, so real quick, points ignition is not stupid. Okay, a lot of people say this is like obsolete. It is for racing, but this is a really good dependable system. You just have to change your points out. But you can go down there and, like, for $20 you could probably get like 3, 4, 5 sets of points. Okay, so there's a little bit of maintenance involved, but there is nothing wrong with points ignition. It's just mechanical. Every time it breaks the points, it's firing that cylinder. Just inspect those teeth, make sure that little minus sign thing's in there for your oil pump. Make sure that the cam isn't wore, and always make sure that this is not loose. If there's play in this distributor, you're gonna have to go buy a new one. It's gonna go up and down, but this kind of play, you're gonna have to get you a feeler gauge. 16 thousandths, 17 thousandths. Little fingernail emery boards work real good for this. Okay, yeah, if you're messing with an old distributor, make damn sure you clean those points, but you want to put new ones in there. But if you're doing an old distributor, you gotta sand those points and clean them up and then look at them. Open that up and look at them. Okay, now we got that cam at its highest point. Get it at the highest point. Now I'm gonna do 16 thousandths. We're just sliding this in there until we get some resistance. Okay, got some resistance. Okay. You always want to, if you can, look at your wiring diagram. And a lot of these points ignition cars, see, this is off of an old wiring harness, and it actually has a resisted wire coming from the ignition. From the ignition switch. This one's wrapped with some kind of cloth, and it resists the 12 volts down. Whenever you buy an aftermarket coil, like I said, buy the one that comes with the resistor. It's a few more dollars, but it comes with this resistor, so that way you can run 12 volts, and this is going to resist it down. Check for a resisted wire. You're going to have to get a voltmeter and check that. Okay, so you see this right here, this goes on the positive side of the coil. On a GM vehicle, you have 6 volts on with the key through the resisted wire, and then on the starter it has an R position that's going to send 12 volts to the coil while you're cranking it to give this coil more power to start. Just be aware of that. You got 6 volts and 12 whenever you're cranking, but I'm gonna show you that. This goes to start your car. This goes straight to your battery. Now this is all in the color style of General Motors, so the color of the wires can be different. Now this is the resistor that comes with the MSD coil. The distributor is going to have a wire coming out of the bottom. This is going to go over to the negative side of the coil. Now the tach also has a green wire. Goes to the negative side of the coil. Whenever you're sending power to S to crank your car, it's going to send power to R. R is going to be yellow. To the positive side of the coil. Okay, this is just a 20 gauge. On a GM, this can be white, orange, or purple. We're going to use orange. This is going to come on with the key. Go through the resistor. Okay, so these are all the components involved in the ignition system. The alternator is not part of this. The alternator is part of the charging system. You should not have any wires run from the coil to the alternator. I have no idea why people do that. I have other videos on here showing you how to wire a GM3 wire alternator up. But like I said, this is the way it should be wired, and that's it. Okay, we're gonna go put it on the car. So this is my 70 Chevelle with a 454. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the distributor out of it, and we're gonna hook all this up and test it out, show you how it works. You can see how that one looks like an original points. That's actually an aftermarket billet electronic ignition, and you can get those with ignition control module spaces or not. That one does not, so you have to run an ignition box. So I'm going to go ahead and take this distributor out, and we're going to put the other one in and wire it up. So this distributor landed on top dead center on the compression stroke. So when we put the other one in, we're just going to try to point it just like that one. Make sure the gasket's on there, it's on there. So what goes to negative is, this is the green wire from the distributor. Goes to the negative side of the coil, and then the green wire from your tach, negative side of the coil. Okay, so this is the ignition switch. You can see the eye for the ignition on with the key. We got our power for our tach, and we got our ignition to the coil. We're gonna put both of these on ignition. Okay, so you can see that we got coil and tach to ignition on the key switch. Okay, so that's coming from the ignition switch through a ballast resistor on the positive side of the coil. Okay, so if you're going to run point ignition, you have to make sure your starter has the R position, because they eventually did away with it. So you need to make sure you have a starter with that. But we're going to run it to the switch for the video. Okay, so we're just using this yellow wire. We're going to go ahead and put it on the coil, positive. Okay, this should be connected to the starter solenoid. I just can't show it to you in the video, so we're going to connect it to S right here. Okay, so this is exactly like the wiring diagram through the ballast resistor. They do have coils that are 12 volts where you wouldn't have to run that ballast resistor, but you'd have to look that up. So everything is wired just like the wiring diagram, except we have, this should be on the starter solenoid, and it's on the starter switch, just giving it 12 volts when it cranks. When the starter motor's spinning, giving 12 volts to it. Okay, but you would typically run that on R position off of the starter solenoid. Okay, so I'm going to put all the wires on it and get it ready to start. Okay, so let's just talk about this real fast before I start it. 12 volts from the key switch on with the key through a 0.8 ohm resistor to the positive side of the coil. Now this yellow wire right here would normally be ran off of R position on the starter solenoid to give it 12 volts, full straight 12 volts, only when cranking. Okay, so just to be 100% clear on this yellow wire, it gives it 12 volts when cranking on the R position on the starter solenoid. I've had cars before that I didn't have this hooked up and they ran fine. I've had cars before that I couldn't get to run until I hooked this up. So you want to go ahead and hook that 12 volts when cranking. This has ignition and accessories. Whenever you're cranking your car, it's going to shut accessories off, okay? So that's why a lot of cars have the radio, dash lights and stuff ran off of accessories. So whenever you're cranking, you're starting, it's cutting power to anything ran off accessories. But ignition stays on, stays hot when you're cranking your car. Okay, so that's an old distributor that I actually had in high school, like in 2001 and 2 on my 72 Chevelle. So it's old, okay, so this engine's probably gonna run crappy. Another reason is I did not gap the spark plugs at 35 thousandths. If you're running points ignition, you want 7mm wires and you want to gap your plugs 35 thousandths. Okay, I just stuck that distributor wires on there for the video, and I'm not gonna run it that long because these wires are touching the headers. I'm just gonna show you that it starts, okay? I'm gonna bump it, just show you that it starts and shut it off, so don't get mad at me. Okay, you saw it run. It starts up fine. I'll start it up again. Okay, that's something kind of interesting right there. Remember how I said that I didn't have the spark plugs gapped at 35? I have them gapped at 45. And the tach was reading extra high. This engine was probably running at 350, 400 RPM, real slow. And for some reason it was reading like 1500. So I don't know, but that is something kind of interesting. That if possibly your tach is reading real high, maybe because your plugs are not gapped right. I don't know. I've just never seen that happen before, but I've heard people talk about their tach not reading right. And that's the only thing that's that I didn't do on this engine, is gap the plugs to 35 thousandths. Huh. Well, somebody comment on that. If you're watching this video, you know about that. Comment if you know anything about a tach reading weird, because this is the same tach I have on all my videos. I'm gonna put my old distributor back on there and it's gonna work perfect. But for some reason it's reading real high. That's pretty much it. Always mount your coil like that. Never mount the coil laying down on its side. Another thing is that if you're going to run one of these ballast resistors, you need to mount it completely out of the way, like right here, the way where it can't be touched, because it gets super freaking hot. The way that thing resists the voltage down is that it releases that extra voltage as heat or something like that. So this thing can get real freaking hot and burn the crap out of you. So just telling you, if you start messing with yours and that gets hot, don't worry, it's not something wired backwards, it gets hot anyway. Do not mount that ballast resistor anywhere near that coil. You don't want that heat getting that coil hot. Mount this thing somewhere out of the way that you're not going to accidentally touch, because if you touch that thing, it's going to burn the crap out of you. I'm not a freaking master of point ignition, but I've run it on cars before, never had any problems with it. you kind of get an idea how this is supposed to be wired up. If you like the video, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.